What's going on, y'all? It is your girl, Brie Undeniably, checking in for another episode of my new speaker series, Deep Conversations with Dope Individuals, where we're discussing development, decision making, and dedicating yourself to purpose. Today, I am here, as I always am, with a super dope individual. Her name is Lauren Fonvielle. Before I give her the introduction that she deserves, I want to jump into my shout outs. I've been trying to be really diligent about giving those shout outs. Before I jump into the episode, I get so excited. I just want to talk to these awesome people. But quick shout outs first and foremost. If you are listening to this or watching it on YouTube, shout out to Gotham Podcast Studio. They are hooking it up with the studio space, the audio, and the visual. So I am endlessly grateful to be working in partnership with Gotham Podcast Studio. Shout out to MC Kicks. MC Kicks is always hooking it up with merch for me, showing me that support and really putting me on. You can find MC Kicks anywhere on the internet at EMCEEKICKS for all your customizable kicks and denim needs. And finally, I always like to just plug myself and what I'm doing because I think that's really important as well. I am selling my dope individual merch on my site. So if you are a DCDI fan, you've been listening or watching the episodes and want to show support, you can go and get your I Am Possible or Dope Individual gear at my website. That's brieundeniably.com. You can also go right through my shop on Instagram or Facebook. Okay, we are here with Lauren Fonvielle, everyone. I am going to introduce her and then let her take the floor. So, Lauren is an integrative energy practitioner specializing in EFT, which is tapping for stress, anxiety, and trauma. She guides her clients on a journey of self healing, breaking through obstacles, physical, mental, or emotional, that are keeping them from feeling stuck and in pain. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is so much fun. I'm really excited to be here today.
I'm so excited to have you on. I'm really ready to jump into your story, to everything that you've been working on, as well as really what it took to get you to where you're at. So I want to jump right into it. And the way that I really do that, as my listeners know, as a counselor in the counseling community, we like to meet our clients where they're at. I like to do the same thing with my guests for my listeners. So help us meet you where you're at and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. So, as you said, I'm an integrative energy practitioner. And I know
Mhm.
that some people can be like, what does that mean?
What is that?
So, I use a variety of different healing modalities to help people feel at home in their bodies. And that can mean working through emotional pain or even physical pain. And my story really starts with my own personal experience.
Mhm.
And I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and stress. And it really all came to a head when we got notified that my husband was going to deploy.
Mhm.
And while we had done deployments before, this one was going to be different because we had since had two kids. So when we got that news, my anxiety went through the roof, and I found myself in a yoga studio because, in reflecting back, whenever things would get tough, I would find myself going to yoga again. And this particular day, I saw a flyer for yoga teacher training. And something deep within me was just telling me I had to do it.
Mhm.
So while it didn't logically make sense because
Mhm.
now I was going to have to juggle finding somebody to watch the kids and doing all this stuff while my husband was gone, I followed that nudge and I signed up. And it was the best decision I could have made because it really is what started me on this journey of healing. So being around those individuals who were, really into energy in general
Mhm.
introduced me to a whole new world. I was introduced to sound healing, I was introduced to Reiki and meditation, yoga, and then ultimately EFT tapping. And all of these things really helped me get through a challenging time in my life. And so much growth happened. And I started to naturally incorporate these tools when working with my clients. At that time, I had started doing marketing freelancing work. I had been working full time for an agency, and then went off and started doing stuff on my own. And it was really working with entrepreneurs. So then that kind of, there are mindset blocks that come up when you own your own business. And so utilizing these different tools to help people shift their thoughts around that is how it started. And
Mm-hmm.
then it really just kind of morphed from there. And I have since pivoted and really am working more with people specifically on their anxiety, stress, trauma, physical pain to help them feel better. Yeah.
First and foremost, thank you so much for sharing. Especially those, deeper, more vulnerable pieces of really where this all started for you when you found out that your husband was getting deployed again and that this was going to be a much different situation. So, I sincerely appreciate you sharing that with us because I know no matter what we work through, sharing our story, there's always that piece of vulnerability there. So, thank you for that. I want to jump into so many things right now of what you had just talked about, but let's definitely kind of keep it in the past for now, just to get a little bit more of a sense of what the beginning stages were like for you in this part of your story. So a couple of things you mentioned. One, you made the decision to do the yoga teacher training, and that really opened up the door to these energy type practices for healing. Before I even ask a question, I just need to really pump the power of that. And I know that you're going to do that in this episode, but I just think it's so important to understand, and this might have been a part of your process, that there are so many modalities out there for us to heal as human beings, and one modality is not necessarily the best from one individual to the next. Wow, that was a tongue twister. Yeah, one modality is not necessarily the best from one individual to the next. However, you really have so many options to be able to try and test and experiment and understand what might work for you. And I just think that the power of energy practices in healing can be so, so important. And I feel like it's finally making its way on the map. I think actually the pandemic in itself has opened a lot of those energy practices up to people because they're looking for a way to sort of really find that healing or find that stress relief or find that anxiety relief that's not necessarily using a medication or some type of substance otherwise. So I just really want to pump that power, especially as a counselor, because I know that, you know, we can often go to medicine first for healing. And I think when we think healing, we think medicine. And I want, and I know that this conversation will bring about the thoughts of healing in regards to using other modalities as well, or in conjunction with whatever you're doing now. So that is just, my hot take on energy healing practices. Let's talk about it for you. So you really had in the beginning never tried anything like this, or what was really that inner pull that you said to make the decision to go into the training?
Yeah, I had practiced yoga
Okay.
on and off over the years,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that it made me feel good. And I also knew that with two young kids, I
Mm-hmm.
needed to be doing something for me in order
Mm-hmm.
to show up as my best self for them. And that's really what pushed me in that direction. And I think one of the first classes that I took at this particular studio was a yin yoga class,
Mm-hmm.
and the instructor, who I'm now really good friends with, played sound healing bowls, and something just magical happened during that session. And it was almost like, I guess, like an out of body experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted more of it. I'm like, I just felt afterwards, I just felt so calm and so at ease and at peace. And I wanted more of it. And so that got me learning about sound healing and how when you play those bowls, the vibration of the bowl syncs up with the vibration of your body, because at our smallest molecular level, we are vibrating,
Mm-hmm.
and that helps the energy to move. So when you have, energy that's stuck or stagnant, something like that can help. And then, yeah, it was the curiosity, really. I'm like, well, what else is there? And like you said, there's people react differently to different things, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm always encouraging people, try, explore. If something piques your curiosity, I always say there's a reason for that, and it's not for you to ignore it.
Yes.
So try it. Like, what's the worst that can happen with
Mm-hmm.
that, and it really is this practice of healing from the inside out. And something that I always say to my clients is that, you're doing the work. I'm guiding you on the journey, but you have all the answers within. And sometimes you just need a little bit of help accessing them, and that's where my role comes in introducing different techniques, different modalities, to see what feels best in your body and what you respond to.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so interesting. Just to go back to the very beginning of what you were just saying, the synchronicity of vibration from the music to the deepest molecular pieces of our body. I think just the way that you put that actually, for me, put it into a new perspective of understanding. So I just, that I guess matching of energy is really cool to think about, you know?
Yeah, it's like, there's actually, I'm a very visual person. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you've seen this, or maybe anybody else has seen this, but there's a video that I've seen on Instagram where it's like salt on a table, a special kind of table. And the guy is using this device to kind of hit the side of it to make it vibrate.
Mm-hmm.
And the sound of it makes the salt jump on the table. And every time it makes these cool different designs. And and that's what's happening inside of your body. Your body
Mm-hmm.
is syncing up with that music, that vibration, and it's moving in these different patterns, and that helps you to feel better.
Yes. Absolutely. And I love that I love that you said that this is, you're working with your clients now to really help them feel almost like to feel that sense of ease maybe that you felt in those moments. Like that is really what you're practicing now, is to find the right techniques or modalities for your clients to have that sense of ease or relief or healing.
Yeah, and to really utilize and tune into the intuition. I
Mm-hmm.
recently read a book and actually went to a conference by Anita Morjani, and she talks about the five senses, and how there's actually like the sixth sense, which is, that connection with your higher self, with your
Mm-hmm.
intuition, and trusting that,
Yes.
and helping my clients learn how to do that, if that's something that they're struggling with, is definitely a passion too.
I love that, and I'm jumping way ahead, but as I've already briefed you on, I'll do a little bit of a rapid fire round at the end of all of this, and that what you are speaking on is very much part of one of the questions that I ask about decision making, and I think it's so interesting that you're touching on it now, because it's not something that I find a lot of coaches that I speak with are working with clients on, is that like intuitive practice, or that really following your higher self, or tuning into that piece of you, and what that even means. Because I know, talking about this, for some people it feels like, whoa, this could be over my head. What is my higher self? What is this energy that you speak of? So I love that we're kind of going there, because I think it's really important to open up, you know any of my listeners' ears, or whoever is open to trying something new. And, if it has to do with decision making as well, kind of like driving those next steps of your life and how you're making those changes in your life, I just think it's such a great way to help guide people into making sound decisions for themselves.
Yeah, and sometimes you feel like almost, or I've worked with people, and sometimes myself too. Like you feel like there's that block with that intuition,
Mm-hmm.
and I have found that EFT tapping can be really, really helpful in getting to the root of that. And for those people that can feel skeptical, right, about
Mm-hmm.
energy work, and believe me, I was skeptical especially when I was first introduced to Reiki and also EFT.
Yes.
And with EFT, there is a lot of science that backs it up, and there's studies that have been done, and so there's the science part of what's happening in your body when you're tapping on these different points. And so for those people that aren't familiar with what tapping is, tapping, also referred to as EFT, stands for Emotional Freedom Technique.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a process that helps you do just that. It helps you find freedom from your emotions. And it's simply tapping on certain points of the body. And at the same time, you're acknowledging how you are feeling. And in doing so, what's happening internally is when you're tapping on these points, it's sending a message to the amygdala, and the amygdala is the part of the brain that is in control of fight or flight.
Yes.
And it is telling that part of the brain, hey, you're actually not in fight or flight right now. You don't need to be, right?
Yeah.
Because, a lot of the
You're
time,
okay.
yeah, like because a lot, and that I do like to always remind people that part of your brain is there to protect you, right? When
Yes.
you're in a situation where you need to fight back, where you need to run away, then that starts to fire so that the cortisol starts pumping through your body so that you can react appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
However, in this day and age, with the intensity of our jobs and stress at home, that amygdala can be firing all the time, and then
Mm-hmm.
that's not healthy. That's not helpful. And so when you start to have, let's say, an anxiety attack, or you are feeling really stressed out and really overwhelmed, if you take the time to tap on these points, what's happening is it's sending a message to the amygdala, and it's saying, hey, you're actually not in fight or flight. You don't need to be creating all of that cortisol. And the studies have shown that it reduces the amount of cortisol pumping through your body by up to 43%.
Wow.
Huge
Wow.
number, right? And
Huge
literally
number.
the answer is at your fingertips.
It's pretty incredible. The power
Yeah.
that we hold within ourselves, right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And then so just the simple act of tapping can help you do that. And when the added part of really speaking aloud the things that you've been thinking, that's where you start to you start to create some different awareness around it, because a lot of the time when we have these thoughts that we're thinking over and over and over again in our
Mm-hmm.
head, right, we get caught in that loop. So when we take a moment to actually say it out loud, sometimes in certain situations it can be like, okay, that felt really true when I first said it, and then you continue to tap on the points and you're like, wait a second, that seems kind of silly now, like that. And so you create this cognitive shift, and your brain is literally rewiring itself. So you're getting this new perspective, and then when you begin to think differently, then you can feel differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's some powerful work. So I did just want to say there's science behind some of this stuff. So for those that are skeptical, there's lots of
Absolutely.
studies.
And I love that you bring that in because, sometimes that is what people are looking for. But, even things when we're talking about energy, there still is that science backed research for
Mhm.
it, for us, to say. And I know that this is something that we also learn in the counseling community. This is actually a technique that we go through, at least in my program. We didn't do a ton of work on it, but we really touch on every theoretical practice that you could possibly use
Mhm.
in a counseling setting, and EFT was for sure one of them. And um, what for me, my personal story, it was not me. I haven't used it in a way that other than with clients. But those clients were students, and that is really the personal story that I have because I learned it when I was in grad school and then kind of just filed it away into my box of all the several theoretical practices that I could be using. But for school counseling, it is very much solution focused therapy. And one of my co counselors that I worked with actually did a lesson with all of the teachers and staff about how she was using EFT with students. And I thought it was just the way that she did um, it was so awesome. And it was really the first time that I saw it done in practice. And I saw how it was really helping our students in ways that it was just for them in conjunction with the solution focused therapy. And for those listening, solution focused therapy is exactly what it sounds like. It's, using therapeutic techniques to figure out what the best and also most succinct solution will be for students. This is primarily what we use because we can't have them in the counseling office all day. We do need to send them back to class. So we want them feeling better as soon as possible. And then if it's something longer, we will have several sessions. But solution focused therapy is the primary. And my co counselor used this in conjunction with it because she found that it really was a quick and effective solution to really help the students calm down. And it also worked with teachers who were feeling that overwhelm or that stress or that anxiety as well. So that's just really my own personal plug on how I've seen it really put into practice in a really monumental way, seeing it really work wonders for some of our students. So um, I actually want to talk to you about maybe a little bit more of the practice itself. So the places that we tap, are those specific places, and are those places specific to what we are, that feedback loop, like what we are thinking or what we are feeling? How does that work?
Yeah, so we tap on the same points. It
Okay.
doesn't, regardless of whatever the topic is that you're tapping on, you're still
Mm-hmm.
going to be tapping on the same points. And when I describe it to people, I do like to compare it to acupuncture,
Mm-hmm.
because when you go to an acupuncturist, they're taking those, tiny little needles, and they're putting them in at certain points. And those points that they're putting those needles in at are the end points of the meridians. And the meridians are how energy moves through the body, right? So the points that we're tapping on are some of those same points that if you went to an acupuncturist, that they would put the needles in at. And instead of putting needles in, we're doing acupressure and applying light pressure by tapping on these points.
Okay.
And so we do what's called a round of tapping. And if you want, I can go through and share where each of the points are.
Let's do it. Yeah, because I do have listeners who can, listen in if we audibly say those points, but also I have those watching on YouTube. So please feel free. I would love to do a quick session or a quick.
Awesome. Yeah. And I do have a PDF I can send you too that you can put in the show notes for people that are just listening so they can see it.
Wonderful.
All right. So the first point is the pinky side of the hand, and you can tap with either hand. So I typically tap with my right because I'm a righty, but it does not matter. I will say you, of course, want to make sure that you have clean hands when you're doing this because we are going to be touching our face. And if at any point tapping on any of these points is bothersome to you, you can just skip the point. You can also just hold and apply gentle pressure and hold the point as opposed to tapping. I do work with people that are dealing with physical issues.
Mm-hmm.
I had one client in particular with fibromyalgia where the tapping was bothersome to her. So we
Mm-hmm.
would just hold the points instead. So I do like to share that as another option. So you stay on the pinky side. Oh, did you have a
No, I was
question?
just going to ask about the frequency of tapping. Is it
Mhm.
just kind of a like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah, there's
or
no real wrong way of doing it. A lot of
okay?
times people will ask, well, how many times do I
Yeah.
tap on each
Right.
point? Um, it's kind of what feels right. I think the books will say at least 7 or 8 times. You can obviously see I'm staying on this pinky side of the hand for quite a bit of time.
Feels good.
And
Okay.
when you get to the point where you're adding in words to this, it's kind of like I'll do a sentence on each point and then move to the next point.
And for that, when you do add in words, like what might that sentence sound like?
Yeah.
Let's say I am dealing with severe anxiety about an upcoming meeting that I have or
Okay.
test or something. Or
So we would start with a setup statement, and we do that setup statement here on the pinky side of the hand. So we would
Mhm.
say something like, even though I have all this anxiety about the meeting, right here, right now, I'm acknowledging it. And we would
Okay.
say that sentence 3 times on the side of the hand, and you could do what they call like flex the statement. So the basic statement is, even though I'm having all this anxiety about this meeting, I love and accept myself. Some
Okay.
people struggle with saying I love and accept myself, so you can change that to that's just how it is, or that's how I'm feeling right now. You know,
Hmm.
you can change that if saying I love and accept myself is uncomfortable.
Got it.
And then when you move to the next point, so the next point is the right in the top of the head. So the crown of the head, like when you go to the doctor and they bring the little stick down to see how tall you are, it hits you
Yeah.
right in the center. That's where you wanna be tapping. And so then on all of the following points, you could keep it really simple, especially if you're just starting, and just say all of this anxiety. And then we would go, the next point is the start of the eyebrows. So you can use two hands, and I usually use two fingers from each hand above the start of the eyebrows, so close to the nose or the bridge of the nose.
Is
And then we
closing
would,
my eyes part of this?
you
Be-
can close your eyes, absolutely.
Everyone watching, my eyes are totally closed right now. It just feels real, like it does. It feels calming, it's
Relaxing.
soothing. Yes.
And so you would just say that statement again, all of this anxiety.
Okay.
And then we would go to the side of the eyes, so kind of on the eye bone on the side of the eye. So not so close to your eye that you're making yourself blink or anything like that, but right there. And again, you would say all of this anxiety. And then under the eye, and again, all of this anxiety. And then we would go under the nose. So, really, at that point where the 90-degree angle where the lip kind of comes together with the nose,
Mm-hmm.
all of this anxiety. And then the next point is the chin crease. So, just below the lip and above the point of the chin, all of this anxiety. And then we're going to come to the collarbone points. So we have that, center like little divot area. You go down about an inch, over about inch and a half. And so you're really on the fleshy part
Okay.
underneath the collarbone. And so you can do it how I'm doing it right here with both hands, so one hand on each side, or you can take one hand and really spread it apart so that the index finger would be hitting one point and the thumb would be hitting another point. And if you think about it, as we're kind of going through these points, you can kind of notice, well, what are some of the points that I naturally touch during the day? This chest one is a common one. Like people will bring their hand like over their heart and just be like, take a pause if something is
Mm-hmm.
is going on. Or those eyebrow points, if you're really stressed out and you're sitting at your desk and you're like, you like bring your hands to your eyes, or you rub your temples, right? You'll naturally be brought to those points. And there's a reason. There's an innate knowledge in our body that this helps us. So
I'm even thinking, like a common way people will fidget in those times of anxiety or stress is with their hands, and that's very,
yeah,
side of the pinky as well,
yeah,
where you'll
yeah.
squeeze and hold.
So then the next point is under the arm. So for women, it's like the center of the bra strap.
Okay.
For men, I guess that's like 2.5 inches, 3 inches from the armpit. And so you can do under one arm and then under the other. You can kind of give yourself a hug and do both at the same time, which always feels a little awkward. Or like, kind of like the monkey move. Like it's really
All
just
these.
playing around with it so you see what feels best to you. And then the last point is on the back of the hand between the pinky and the ring finger. And I tend to like to bring my hands onto my chest and tap that point right between the pinky and the ring finger on the back side of the hand. And that's it. So that's the what we call a round, and it's simply because we're
Okay.
going in a circle,
Yeah.
right? And then I do always like to share some additional points, right? So just like how I said, when you go to acupuncture, they put the needles in all over your body at these
Mm-hmm.
different points. With tapping, we typically stay within the round of
Okay.
these points, but there are some additional finger points which can be helpful in the situation where you're starting to feel anxious, you're in public, you don't want to be tapping on your head and having people like be like, what is she doing,
Yeah.
so you can just like squeeze at the bed of all of the nails. So if you bring your fingers on either side of, let's start with the pinky, and just squeeze at the bed of the nail,
Okay.
squeezing And so you could just, and I tell this to my kids too. You can just put your hands in your lap at school if you're starting to get anxious about a test or something, and take some deep breaths and just continue to squeeze at the bed of the nail of each finger. And again, just as a reminder, as you're doing this, it's sending that message to the amygdala, letting the amygdala know, hey, don't need to be freaking out right now. And it's reducing the amount of cortisol pumping through the body. And the cortisol is the stress hormone.
Mm-hmm.
So by reducing that, you're calming your body. When you calm your body, then you can calm your mind. And when you have a calm mind, you can think straight and make good sound decisions. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so those are all of the points.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much for leading us through that. I actually think, I've done several episodes at this point, but that was the first like real hands-on demonstration I've done on the podcast. So
Hey.
yes, I really appreciate you doing that. I think that is so cool. I think there's so much power and benefit to this. And I just, again, you just spoke about that science piece and, if you want to look into it more, you can really see that this is something that is backed fully by science. It definitely has, that research component that goes with it. Interestingly enough, I actually just spoke with, for everyone who's listening, I do a pre-interview before I bring guests on the show just to make sure they're the right fit for the series. And I just had another individual who had a really powerful, life-changing breakthrough with EFT. And I just, that for me, I was like, oh wow, this is actually interesting for me because having you on the podcast and then having her, who I am excited to speak with her as well, just two people who are really speaking to the power of this type of therapeutic practice. So just really cool. It's definitely beneficial. I even feel like I'm in more of a, relaxed space after going through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I didn't say this before, but what you do when you're starting is you really tune into how you're feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, like how anxious am I feeling on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being not anxious at all, 10 being, over the top anxious. And then as you go through the points and tap, and then you pause after you do a round or two, and then you check in again and you see if that number has shifted at all. So it just gives you that check in point.
Yeah.
And the results really are substantial. And I recently read there was a study that was done specifically for veterans who've been diagnosed with PTSD, and after 6 weeks of tapping, there were 90% of the people in this group, their PTSD symptoms were reduced, so much so that they were no longer diagnosed with PTSD. I mean, that is,
Wow.
yeah, like that's phenomenal, right? So
Yes.
yeah, and those results were maintained for the at the 3 and the 6 month mark after that those sessions. So it's powerful stuff. It really is this process of what, particularly with PTSD, it helps to create space
Mm-hmm.
between the trauma that happened to you, that event that happened to you, and with PTSD, right? Like there's a trigger that's something that's happening in present time that then is bringing you back to that event that happened in the past, and you physically are feeling in the present moment as if it's happening now,
Mm-hmm.
even though it happened in the past, right? So when you're tapping, it really helps to create this space between the event and the physical sensation in your body. So
Yes.
it doesn't erase what happened to you or change your thoughts about it, but it changes your physical reaction to it, which is what which is what anybody who's suffering with from trauma like that wants. They don't want to like hear a boom from a car and then be brought back to
Right.
that terrible car accident that they were in, or whatever the case may be. They want to be able to stay at that even keel.
Right. And it's so interesting. And the way that you really kind of just described how trauma might replay in our bodies, I thought was so beautifully put as well. And this practice that creating space, it's almost like a disassociation, like from the actual thought of the event and the feelings that paired with the event. So though you can continue, it's not erasing, the trauma, it's the or the event that happened during the traumatic experience. It's helping alleviate, or again, like you said, take that make that space from the feelings that arise when you have that thought about the traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And as I've talked about in excess, we, not in this episode, but just in general, we know that our thoughts and our feelings are very, very much intertwined. So having a practice when that we can kind of untangle them from each other and be able to separate, especially if it's a feeling that we don't want to continue to keep feeling, is really interesting to have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful, powerful stuff.
It's
Like, I mean, I could talk about the science all day. There was another study that it showed that tapping positively influenced the gene expression in 72 genes, and yeah,
wow.
and it reduces inflammation in the body. And when we're talking about physical pain, inflammation is related to physical pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can reduce the inflammation, it can shift how you feel. So yeah, so I always say, like, sometimes it feels like magic,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're doing it. I had a session with a client. Actually, this was at a workshop I was doing, and when I do my workshops, I often ask for a volunteer, and this was a woman who was it was a support group for women with fibromyalgia, and she was having a really bad flare up and had been on her couch for 3 days, really unable to move a lot because her knees had been hurting her so badly. And she was skeptical, right? She was being introduced to this for the first time because the woman who ran the group had had a good experience with tapping, so she invited me in to teach this workshop. And so I think often when we're kind of like at our wits end, whether it's an emotional issue or a physical issue, you're kind of get to that point. Well, I'll try anything, sure,
Yes.
bring it on. I just want to feel better, right? So she volunteered and we started tapping, and like the look on her face of like, wait, like what's happening? Like it's feeling better, like,
How is this working? Yeah.
yeah. And she's like, she said, and I've said this to some other people. I was like, she said, this is freaking me out. She was just so surprised by the fact that it was working. And then I know that like our brains want to understand it, right? They
Yes.
were like, why is this working? This is so weird. Why is this working? And so while I always encourage curiosity and research and all of that, I also try to say, try not to get into your head. So if you're someone who does try this on your own
Mm-hmm.
and you are beginning to notice things and then you start questioning, well, why is this working? This is so strange. Just allow and accept the fact that you're feeling better, right? Like
Right.
don't push it away because you don't understand it. Accept it and have some gratitude for the fact that it is working, and yeah, she was like so excited, and we finished the session, and she wanted to go. She was like, I'm gonna go wash my dishes now, because she'd been like sitting on the couch for 3 days not being able to do that, and she was excited to be able to move around. So yeah, I definitely encourage this for people that are struggling with physical pain too.
I love that you said just be able to accept that it is working as well, because that is so true. And we have spoke about the science of it on this episode, but point blank period, if it's working and if it's healing you, it's healing you,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be from emotional pain or physical pain, because now you've let us know that it can work for both. If it is working, continue to try it or practice it. Definitely feel free to research it, but don't push it away because you don't understand it. Because, hey, I mean, I'm sure a lot of us, if there is a medication that we're taking, or for that person who might try this, I'm sure you don't understand exactly all, unless you're a pharmacist or a doctor yourself, what is in that medication, or exactly how it's, intermixing inside of your body and with your chemicals to create whatever reactions it creates. right? So we don't necessarily need to have that 100% understanding to understand that it is valuable for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so there's a couple things before we kind of get into the end of the session that I want to go into. The first thing, which I don't know that we actually really touched on, but I kind of want to know, um, after your first experience with this. So this is kind of transitioning a little further back in your story again, but what was after that? Was it like you had this first experience, and then you knew that this was something that you really wanted to pursue for yourself to help others, or did it take you some time to figure out, like, okay, this worked for me. How am I gonna sort of integrate it into my life and such?
Yeah. So I was first introduced to it in a group setting,
Hmm.
and it was you know, we all were tapping together, and I noticed that I felt a lot calmer.
Hmm.
And so after that, then I did book some one-on-one sessions with a practitioner,
Hmm.
and that's when I learned that this could really help with physical pain. And when I'm dealing with anxiety and stress, it really tends to show up physically in my jaw and
Okay.
in my neck and my shoulders. And I had a really bad, at that time, because of all that anxiety, had a really bad TMJ flare up.
Mm.
And I we started the session, and she asked me how much pain I was in, and I said I was at an 8. And then by the end of the session, she asked me to check back in again, and I was down to a 2. And that blew me away because I'd been trying so many different things to make it better, and wearing the retainer night guard thing, and putting the peppermint oil on my jaw, and trying to consciously relax, like all
Yeah.
sorts of different techniques, massage, all that. And so for me, it was this real realization that, wow, there was some real anger and feelings of betrayal that were stuck in my jaw, that I uncovered in that
Wow.
session. And so after that, yeah, I continued working with the practitioner, and then I also was continuing to tap on my own as well. And then I naturally started to start using it with some of my marketing clients that I was for doing some freelance work with, which was kind of when my business was shifting and turning more into coaching, as opposed to just doing writing work for them.
Hmm.
And then it was at that point when I wanted to really share it with others, because I'm like, try this thing, like this thing has really worked for me. Let's see if it works for you. And I was like, okay, I need to get trained in this so that I can teach it appropriately and utilize it as it should be. And that's when I really started to explore the certification process and going through that.
Wonderful. And now at this point, you have been certified in what is the certification exactly for?
Yeah, so I'm a EFT practitioner certified through EFT International, and I
Okay.
just completed my advanced certification practice. It's a pretty lengthy process that they have, but it's very well done, um, and it's proven to be worth its weight in gold for me personally, and then also for the results that I'm seeing in my clients.
Of course. Well, congratulations on completing that as well.
Thank
Especially,
you.
yeah, if it's a pretty lengthy program. I know that completing any type of certificate program is a big accomplishment. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
congratulations
Thank
there.
you.
Of course. Awesome. And now, we've definitely gone through your story. We've gone through exactly what you're doing. You're here today working with clients, using EFT tapping as your primary modality, or have you incorporated
It
a bunch?
depends.
Okay.
Like I mean, I am passionate about tapping, so it's definitely a mainstay in my practice with
Hmm.
clients. But it's always dependent upon what the client has going on, what their issue is, what their preference is too, what they like. Because I'll incorporate a wide variety, and then it's also infused with coaching too. With the main goal of feeling better, releasing the physical pain or the emotional
Hmm.
pain. And also it's always my intention to teach my clients how to do this in a way that they're comfortable in doing it on their own, so that they can continue with the practice and be successful on their own as well.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. We are at the place in the podcast now where I do want to kind of bring it full circle and bring in that purpose piece. I feel like it's so clear to me that you are, living out something that feels purposeful to you by taking this experience and being able to bring it to others because you have that passion for it. Where, what is purpose to you, and how do you feel like that fits into your life?
Yeah. I think for me, the purpose is to follow my own intuition. This all started with me following a little nudge to to sign up for yoga, and I
Mm-hmm.
never in a million years would have dreamt that it would take me on this ride that it has taken me.
Yes.
And really doing what makes you feel good, and what brings you joy. And when you do that, that is going to bring joy not only to you, but to those around you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's so beautifully put. Exactly, how I really look at purpose is taking what brings that joy to you or what you have that passion for and being able to bring that to the world, bring that to others. And again, hearing your story, speaking with you today, it is so clear to me that that is exactly what you're doing with your practice. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing a bit of that with us.
Yeah, I love this. This has been a fun conversation.
Of
Thanks for
course, absolutely. I totally agree. And unfortunately, I wish we could continue to, I feel like I could talk about this for days and listen to you talk about it for days because it's so interesting to me. But we are winding down in the episode. So we are at the rapid fire question round, which I have briefed you on a little bit. We're just going to go through the this or that questions, and then I'm going to sort of give you the floor to let everyone know, some final thoughts and then where they can find you.
Okay,
All
great.
right. All right. So, rapid fire at the beginning of the show, I let you know that we're talking about development, decision making, and dedication to purpose. We have thoroughly covered all three of them in this. It is very clear to me, as I've already said. So let's talk about development first. Currently, in this very moment, are you working more on personal development or professional development?
Personal development.
Personal, awesome. Okay, decision making, and I mentioned this in the beginning of the episode when you had spoke on intuition. Um, for your decision making processes, do you rely more on choice or guiding voice? Choice meaning you're a numbers person, you kind of go where the analytics tell you. Guiding voice means intuition, spirituality, gut feeling, or something of the sort.
Guiding voice all the way.
Hmm. I picked that one out real quick. Guiding voice, awesome. And finally, dedication to purpose. Is this a singular moment in time where you realize your purpose and just follow it straight through, or is this a daily dedication and a daily practice?
Mm. Oh, I like that question. Um, I think it is a daily practice because I think our lives, things happen in our lives, and things change, and figuring out on a day-to-day basis what that means and going after what you want can shift. So yeah, I would say day to day.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate your explanations there. Awesome. Okay, that's the end of my rapid fire question round. Quick and painless. I just like to see people's perspectives on those three topics as it's what I'm continually working on in these podcasts, in my own business ventures, working on that development and decision making piece and that purpose piece. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we are winding down. I want to leave you the floor to really let listeners give them whatever final thoughts you have, and then also let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah. So as far as final thoughts, I would say just to anybody who's out there that feels like they're struggling or stuck, know that the answers are all within. They are there. It may feel like
I love
you don't know how to access them yet, but I promise you that they are there, and do not give up hope on finding them. If you are interested in, learning more or diving deeper, particularly with EFT, I do have a masterclass, a free masterclass on my website, which is mindshiftwithlauren.com/masterclass. And I would love to have you dive deeper too, because I'm always so excited to share this information with people. And then if you're feeling called to learn how this could help you specifically and what you've got going on, I do offer free consultations, and you can set up an appointment by visiting talkwithlauren.com. And then of course there's my website, which is mindshiftwithlauren.com, and all of my social is on there as well.
Wonderful. And I will be sure to put all of this in the show notes, as well as that the PDF, I believe you said, or that link to actually see the tapping loop. Was that what it's called? The loop or
Oh, the yeah, the circ tapping, the round of tapping.
round of tapping? Okay,
Yes.
here I am making things up. The round of tapping. I will attach it all into the show notes. You will know exactly where to find Lauren and everything that she is doing and all of the resources that she has available. Lauren Fonvielle, everyone. Lauren, thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been great.
Absolutely. All right. And that is the end of this episode as I end all of my shows. Until next time, let this be the moment.